Couple of things you need to know about bananas. Number one, you've been opening it all wrong. If you watch monkeys do it, you'll see, start at the bottom, wind up with a nice little handle. You don't have to deal with any of those nasty strings. The second thing you need to know about bananas, in less than 10 years, they'll all be gone. Come on, let me take you where the food comes from. Odd, probably a very small percentage of the people who are watching us will have ever heard of Big Mike, aka the Gros Michel banana that was the predecessor of the Cavendish that we've all grown up with. Now there are probably people in our audience who were eating the Gros Michel back in their early childhood or early days. That's a variety that disappeared by the 1950s. Really, the Cavendish banana, what we all think of as a banana, that had become commonplace. That was a predominant variety. But for many, many, many years before that, the variety was the Gros Michel, and then it went away. The plantations were established. They had found a great banana that would ship. It would last. It tasted great. Everybody loved it. And then, in the early 20th century,
that's right. Disaster starts to strike very slowly at first, but we see this fungus that gets into the soil of where we produce our bananas, and it starts in areas of the world where there's large concentrations of plantations, and then slowly spreads country by country through all the ways that diseases can spread. And once it's in the soil, you can't grow those bananas there. All those trees will be dead in a couple of years, and or they won't be producing anymore. Sure. And now that soil can no longer sustain banana production.
And that's what happened to the Gros Michel. It died out. Fortunately, at that time, there was another contender on deck and standing by in the batting circle was now batting number 7, Cavendish banana.
The Cavendish banana.
It was a very simple swap out. Now, very critically, they replaced the Gros Michel with the Cavendish, but the Fusarium was still in the dirt.
Fusarium is a family of diseases, organisms that all have different capabilities and attributes. And so the one that wiped out the Gros Michel is in the same family as the one we're dealing with today, but it is different. And so the Cavendish was able to survive the initial wave of disease that the Gros Michel was not able to. But now there's a new variety of this fungus that we have to deal with.
It took a period of years, a few decades, for the Gros Michel to be finally defunct, and the Cavendish come into play. There's nobody on deck with the Cavendish banana. There's not another variety of banana that can take the Cavendish's places the way the Cavendish took the Gros Michel's place. You're dealing with deadlines, and you're dealing with timelines. This has already been spreading in the Cavendish crop. How long has this been problematic in Central America, Cavendish plantations?
Well, it's been going on in the world for a couple of decades, and so it's been a slow march. It basically took out production acres in the Philippines and Asia.
Oh, so this isn't just our hemisphere problem, this is a global problem.
This is a global problem.
Wow.
That's far more advanced in some of those other areas. So the pressure essentially eliminated a lot of their production capabilities in these important banana producing countries, and it continued to move across the Middle East, and the area around Latin America has been the final holdout. So we're down to our last few batters, to make a baseball analogy. To have the acres we need to produce bananas for the world largely comes from those countries like Costa Rica, Honduras, Ecuador, and those regions. And so what we're seeing now is even in a few of these areas in South America, we're finding the fungus. that it's made its way into some areas, and they're rapidly trying to contain it. They've put in place all these controls. They're doing everything they can to limit the spread and slow it, but it's just that steady progression that you can't control everything.
And once it's there, once it's in the soil, it's there.
That's right.
And once it starts, you're not going to get it back. The genie's out of the bottle. There's no putting it back in.
And so it's become a race, a technology race to say, what can we do now before it's too late?
When is it too late?
Yeah, well, I'm measuring it in years, not
years.
decades. So I look at it, the data, and what I see is a pretty steady progression. I'm not the expert in that field, but it advanced fairly quickly in regions where it starts to show up. And so I look at it and say, okay, well, if it's there, it's in a lot of places we just haven't found yet. If we detected it in one spot, I guarantee you it's in more. And if we don't know where it is and we know it's generally in that vicinity, we've got a bigger problem, and it's only a matter of time before we discover it. And my fear is that the changes are coming too fast for nature and the processes that it normally uses to evolve resistance and survive to keep up.
Enter science and technology.
Exactly.
Todd, there's a lot of stuff going on around here. I don't know what any of it is. I know it's all going to help save my bananas, and I can't do breakfast without my bananas. Can't do banana pudding without my bananas either. But this is all going to make sure that future generations have bananas, and they have the same banana, this lovely Cavendish banana that we've all gotten used to. What's going on around us with all this flurry of activity everywhere we look?
Oh, it's so true, Chip. We're going to blow your minds today a little bit as we look at all of the ways technology is changing what we're doing in agriculture, what we're doing in food.
Now, our focus today is bananas, but banana is hardly the only research going on here.
That's right. I think fundamentally, ELO is about making nutritious, healthy food and making it more affordable and more available to where it's needed most.
The Cavendish banana that we all love so much, the Fusarium wilt, they call it Panama disease, just tearing apart the Central American crop. And if something's not done, we're not going to have bananas in this hemisphere.
Nature needs help in this case. The banana as it exists today is being wiped out systematically across the globe. And there's nothing that the banana has, that current Cavendish banana has, that provides any defense to that onslaught of the disease. And we've seen it now across Asia and across the Middle East. All of a sudden, they no longer can produce those bananas. They're done. It rots from the inside out. Those trees are dead within a few years, and it stays in the soil. So you can't even go back into those lands. And so those farmers that are growing bananas in those plantations, they not only lose their livelihood with the banana plants, but they no longer can produce bananas on those crops in those fields.
Your detective game started with, how are we going to build a better banana? How do we build a Cavendish banana that can resist Panama disease, that can sustain this blight that's going to literally save the banana?
So what we did with the Cavendish is we started looking at all the distant relatives and uncles and aunts and cousins of the Cavendish banana that create really uninteresting bananas, but they have similar genes and similar genomics, and you'll find resistance in some of those cousins and uncles and aunts, distant relatives.
There are something like over 200 varieties of bananas. There's just not a whole lot that we like, or that we can eat, or that are good for us.
A lot of them aren't sweet, or they're full of little BBs that are seeds.
The horrible seeds, yeah.
Yeah,
they
really
just
interesting.
Taste awful.
But the diversity is important, right? And that's where monoculture and the way we grow a lot of crops creates these challenges.
Now, when we say monoculture, what we're talking about is planting one variety of the same crop as a predominant variety.
There's some interesting crops like Cavendish bananas that are clonally propagated. They can't do traditional breeding steps the way we do with, say, corn or soybeans. They don't get the diversity that nature brings in through traditional breeding steps with what you'd call sexual breeding and crossing. That creates a lot of interesting diversity, and those crops can withstand new challenges because they evolve over time and the breeders can work with them over time. It's different with bananas. You can't do that. You're essentially creating a clone. What we found as we went looking at all of the distant relatives was, wow, there is some genes out there that make some of those plants resistant. They're not interesting commercially, or they taste terrible, but in the family, There's solutions.
In that same banana family, a plant that might not be edible or desirable on our table might have a characteristic. It's better able to resist disease. It's better able to resist Panama disease, Fusarium wilt.
That's exactly right.
So you've got to find the right one. That's the detective game. Then you got to mix and match.
And how do we then get that particular gene into the crop that matters to us?
Todd, how do you do that?
Well, that's where these labs come into play.
Aha!
Yeah. There's some interesting technology tools now. We call them gene editing. And it's some of the latest ways that we can go in and make very precise changes to introduce some of these traits into the crop.
Can we go take a closer look at what's going on in some of these labs?
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
When we're working with bananas, it's a unique system and it's very challenging because of the way bananas grow. We actually have to take it all the way back to a single cell. So what you see as a plant starts with an embryonic cell. We can go in and make those precise edits with our molecular scissors, introduce the changes we need, and then grow from a single cell all the way back to a banana plant. And we call that a protoplast because it's essentially one of those embryonic cells that you can imagine just the way anything would grow back from a single cell. Once you've made your edits, now as it starts to grow, all of those edits are captured in that plant that comes back from it. And we're going to see some of the results of that here in a few minutes. What you see going on here is the next step of our process where we've identified the genes that we need to make some edits in, and now we want to get them into plants. And so our team here in this area is working on bringing the genes into the cells and then growing the cells back into plants. And in that process, we actually have some ways that we can use natural tools to introduce the genes and the edits that we want to make into the plant cells. And it involves a bacteria that's a really interesting way that was essentially the start of the biotech revolution in agriculture, was the discovery of a bacteria that could infect plant cells. And when they infect the plant cells, they deliver the DNA in the bacteria into the plant. And the researchers back in the 80s that were working on this figured out that they could put into that bacteria different kinds of genes with changes from the edits they wanted to make, or sometimes we actually put the molecular scissors in the bacteria, and now we let the bacteria do its job that it was made to do, which is infect plant cells, and it goes in there and it makes the edits and the changes, and now we can bring a plant back from those cells, grow them back out, and we have a whole plant that's got the edits and changes in them. We're using a natural process to help make these changes in the plants, and then we let the plants just grow back the way they would normally grow back from those embryonic tissues that you find in seeds. If you break open a seed, you find those little tissues that ultimately give rise to a whole new plant, and we're able to work with those and then just let them grow back over time. So here's some different stages of what that looks like, and I don't know if the camera's going to show this really well or not, but you can see here the tissue that's started to grow back now from a single cell. This is life coming back here, and what you'll see here on this plate is over on the far side is the very beginning of a shoot that's going to ultimately grow back all the way to a plant. And what we do is we grow those shoots on this special media that gives it, it's like baby formula for plants, right? It gives it everything it needs, and then they slowly grow more and more of these shoots until we can start to move them out into larger containers where they start to look like more regular plants with leaves and roots, and they have the media again they need that's like the baby formula for a growing plant. Now this is sort of an adolescent that's kind of coming along. And then ultimately in the last stage in our tissue culture, they get to that bigger point where now they're ready to go to soil. And so now this guy's ready to be planted and sort of fend for himself.
That's a baby banana tree.
A baby banana. Yeah, we don't need to sing the lullabies anymore. He's ready to kind of start walking on his own. And that's when we move him to soil.
Are bananas plants or trees?
They are trees that grow quite large.
Todd, this is where the magic is happening. This room is where we're going to prove whether we can save the banana or not.
Let's go on in.
All right, let's go. Wow, it's really like a tropical Well, it's not a rainforest because we're not wet, but
That's right.
this is a instantly oppressive, steamy. I can already feel my clothes sticking to me.
So what we want to do is test whether these plants are resistant to the disease.
Okay.
If they pass that test, now they're ready to go to the real fields where we want to evaluate how well do they produce bananas now and have resistance.
So are we in a room crawling with fusarium?
No, in this case, we haven't challenged them yet.
Okay.
So what we actually do when we go to test them is we grow them up to a certain size and then we'll cut them off and look inside to see what's happening inside of that trunk. And if they're rotten from the inside, we know, okay, that one isn't going to be resistant. If we see one that's nice and robust still, even in the presence of all of that fusarium, then we think, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to grow that plant back out again, and we're going to send lots of those down south.
Now the number in this room, I don't know, it might be 3 dozen, 4 dozen.
Yeah.
Is this enough to start a real world trial?
We'll do wave after wave.
Waves of this.
We keep going. We make hundreds and thousands of plants over time, and we evaluate all of them.
Wow. You know what? This is utterly fascinating. It's also utterly sweltering.
We're going to melt in here.
Let's move on.
Very good.
You said not decades, years. Does that mean within 10 years? Yes, we have no bananas?
That's the timeline I have in my mind, is we're racing for solutions and still want to have time to deploy and get the solution out there and make it broadly available. We're working with partners like Dole, who's been a close partner of ours in the race against this disease. They're the ones working with the growers. They're on the ground. They see the challenges growers are facing against all these tropical diseases, including this fungus. And that's where we'll be able to get the solution out there as quickly as possible.
How's your research progressing? How far along are you in creating this resistant banana? We know there are trials underway in Central America now. We've seen the products in your greenhouse. We know it's heading out into the field. It's there being tested now. How far along has it come?
Well, where we are right now is we know we have lots of different varieties or versions of our banana that are resistant to the disease. We give them a mega dose of the fungus while they're here in our greenhouses to see if they make it. And many of our crops have survived that challenge, which is higher than anything they'll ever see in nature. That's the standard we set. We want to hit them with a 10x and make sure that they survive something they'll never actually see in nature.
In the real world,
That's right. And then if they survive
it's like New York. If you can make it there,
make it
you make it anywhere.
And then those have been sent down to South America. We're going to continue churning out more and more of those and sending new waves down to South America for testing. And the next step for us down there is, okay, well, how well did they yield for the farmers? Did they produce the bananas at the same levels as any of their other favorite
Because
clones?
at the end of the day, it's got to work for the farmer or nobody's going to grow it.
That's right.
They've got to be able to make a living.
And it affects the price of the crops and the food, and we need to make sure whatever we provide doesn't increase the cost, and that's the key.
Is it the kind of thing that you can look and go by November 2026, we're going to have an answer? Is there that kind of red letter day? Is there a date circled on a calendar somewhere where you're going to know how successful this has been?
Yeah, we're going to know how successful it is the end of this year and next year.
Wow.
And then we'll have some choices to make, and our partner will have some choices to make.
And that's Dole.
That's right.
That's a name, I've run around with many Dole stickers right in the middle of my forehead, like every kid did right off the banana. How long? Again, I keep thinking about this less than a decade race. Can we do it by then?
I'm absolutely certain we can.
Wow. So we're going from a world where today, very soon, yes, we'll have no bananas, to a world where we won't have to worry about it, at least for a while.
That's right, till the next challenge.
Till the next one. Everybody thinks Circle of Life is just a sweet song from Lion King, but this is the true circle of life, this problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. And I'm doing it like a ladder, but it's really a circle, isn't it?
That's right, it's a battle. at times. And as we see more and more new challenges to our food system, from whether it's climate change or diseases or other forces, that we need to feed the growing population, we need to make nutrition more accessible, we need to keep it affordable, and that's becoming harder and harder to do.
How long did it take to develop the banana you're putting out in the jungles now?
We're in year 4. And
Year 4.
Yeah, so essentially
that might have taken 10 years, 12 years.
15, that's right.
And that's if you hit the right combination and got lucky and rolled the dice right.
You'll need some luck in that.
This is why they create thousands and thousands and thousands of varieties and sub-varieties for testing, looking for the handful that are going to run out in the front of that race, winnow those down a little bit further and try to find that one best chance and then see if it works.
It's looking for a needle in a haystack where the needle might not even be there.
Wow. Now you not only know there is definitely a needle in the haystack, you know exactly where it is.
That's right.
Sounds like you got a plan and it's well underway.
We're dreaming big.
Some people, a lot of people, are skeptical or dubious of science. Maybe they don't trust it at all. Farmers aren't that way. You'll never meet a farmer who doesn't realize science is our friend. We're going to save those bananas out here where the food comes from.